Spyros,
Yes.
welcome.
Thank
Congratulations. Your work on the notch
you.
signaling pathway has become an absolute cornerstone for developmental biology. I mean, a true scientific landmark. How does it feel to be recognized with the Gairdner Award?
It's wonderful. Very great to recognize the work. It's great for the people who have done the work. These are my students and my postdocs, and all of us have been lucky to have good people with us. Otherwise, nothing will happen. And our science is such that it always depends on others. We're as good as our people.
And how do you choose the good people?
How do I choose the good people?
when you're building your teams.
Spark in their eye. Well, a graduate student that has finished and wants to do a postdoc, it has a trajectory. Recommendation letters by people you know, that's key.
Right.
So it's not, it's an art, it's not a science. I mean, and you can go wrong, and I've gone wrong many times, but I've been right many times as well. So.
You spent close to a lifetime exploring how cells talk to one another. I'm curious what still fascinates you about the conversation.
If you make a three-dimensional organism, to make it right, I mean, you look at a Rubik's Cube or something. Things have to be at the right place and the right time. Otherwise, your nose will be in your ear. So how to build an organism with few signaling pathways, it's an extraordinarily deep problem. I'm not into mechanical minutia. The minutia is extremely important if you want to make a drug.
Right.
But the overall picture is much more interesting and much more challenging. The minutia will give you the how,
right?
But the bigger picture will attempt to ask why.
And looking back on those earliest days of the notch research, is there anything that stands out vividly? Any moments where you realized you were onto something important?
Being able to jump into the locus and clone it. That was a pivotal moment. That's what started all that. I mean, Gary Struhl had an interesting slide showing the proliferation of papers, and when I started, there were very, 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 very few papers. It was one lab working on notch full time. And that was Bill Welson's lab, who nobody remembers anymore or mentions. I mean, as if these people didn't exist. And if they were not here, if they were not there rather, we would not be here. It's as simple as that. But you haven't heard many people mentioning them. Or Don Poulson, a giant.
We've heard in some of the earlier conversations we've had about notch, this conversation around model organisms came up. I'm curious if you have a favorite model organism.
Of course I have flies.
Flies.
I mean, what a question. Yes.
Suspect we know the answer, but why the fly? For anyone watching.
Well, because the ability to do genetics is extraordinary. It's 120 years of fly research, really, that backs everything up. A lot of very good people started working on flies and developed technologies that will allow us to do all kinds of magical things through genetics, basically. So it's a good organism, and given the conservation, that what's true for the fly is true for you, it's good. More so than worms, although worms are actually just as important, really, as a model organism. Yeah.
Some elements of science have changed enormously since you started your career. What has stayed the same, and what's changed?
Well, technology has changed. I mean, and in biology, in experimental biology, technology is crucial. Advances are made because of technology. Cloning and mosaics and everything. I mean, AlphaFold now. I mean, everything depends on technology, and you will see. Actually, you can see that a new technique advances the field fast. So it's no. That's what makes it. I mean, and in flies we could identify or rather adapt this new technology faster than in worms, for example. Right? I've mentioned that too. Yeah.
And what stayed the same? What's been kind of conserved?
Oh, stayed the same. Well, that's something that stays the same. Well, stays the same as a concept that you have to have technological advance in order to go to the next level, if you will. All right. And so, and also, you know, the other things have not stayed the same. I mean, science is science. The way science is done. Competition is becoming more. There were more people. Now science is being destroyed by Mr. Trump and his cabal. So you know that's the new thing, if you will. That's something that was there forever. I mean, American science was the jewel of the world. The jewel, I mean, far ahead of everybody, and they're destroying it. So that's extremely worrisome and sad.
Yeah. Do you think there's anything that perhaps the public doesn't understand about, you know, the consequences of those actions and those paths?
The problem is the problem is that until they understand. Those that don't, to understand it is extremely easy, right? I mean, these people defy Cartesian thought. They defy data. They don't understand data, and they dispute scientific truths that are beyond doubt. All right. So, how can you also argue with somebody like that? I mean, arguing with a minister of whatever he is, health or whatever, or non-health, Kennedy. How can you? The guy is insane. You cannot. There's no. You can't discuss with these people.
No.
You cannot persuade them, which makes it extremely dangerous too, because you know, what do you do?
What do you think the future of science will look like? I'll say, what do you hope the future of science?
Future of science looks extremely bright. I mean, the new technologies evolving. I mean, from omics to computing and artificial intelligence and so on. These give you incredible tools, because I mean, the ability to gather enormous amounts of data. With all the omics stuff, right? But you cannot analyze them easily. And artificial intelligence, all the machine learning and what have you, gives you the opportunity to analyze and find relationships that you couldn't even imagine are there.
I'm curious, what do you think the next biggest challenge is that science could help solve?
Well, disease approaches. I mean, that they are again being revolutionized. I mean, you can make new drugs that were unthinkable. So with all these new technologies, you'll eliminate, you know, pain or something, or cancer, or so these kinds of very lofty goals are attainable now. I think. I think that's so. So the science is extremely healthy and very good. The people who control the scientific endeavor, that's the problem.
Yeah. This is maybe too controversial a question. If you don't want to talk about it, that's fine. But I'm curious if you think we can or should depoliticize science.
No, absolutely not. Why should I be afraid to answer that question? I don't understand. No. Science is the service of society. If it's not, even a poet that is doing research serves society. And if you serve society, that's political.
Yes.
So no, of course not. Depoliticized. No way. No
You think
way.
it's crazy? Lots of people interpret that question in different ways, so I'm always curious to just throw it out there and see what resonates
Give me one
with you.
interpretation that I have not considered, maybe. But I mean,
No,
no,
it's beautiful.
no. Science has to be political. It has, not only is, but it has to be political.
I'm curious, how do you foster creativity and curiosity? The next generation of scientists coming up through the ranks.
I leave them freedom,
Yes.
because if you don't have freedom in science, you can't have creativity. And that's part of the problem today. You cannot say, oh, today I'm going to solve cancer, and tomorrow I'll solve Alzheimer's. Never works. So freedom is extremely important. Freedom, also tolerating failure in a good way. I can tell my students that if you come to the lab, you start your project, and you fail an experiment. Come next day, you fail another experiment, and the third, and the fifth, and the 10th, and the 20th. And then one day, the 24th, you have a huge success. And if that allows you to forget the failures, then you're good for science. And that it depends actually on intellectual curiosity. It depends on how much fun it is to do things that nobody has done before. You know, all of that. You know.
Was there ever a piece of advice or a mentor, someone early on in your career who kind of inspired and motivated you to keep going?
During my career, there have been a lot of people that influenced me. David Hogness, who was my postdoc advisor in Stanford, was an inspiration, even though he never interfered ever with experiments or anything else.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you would tell him what's happening, he would encourage you, criticize you, but in a good way, though. I mean, always in a good way. Advice is, if you have a lab, that the lab has to be a happy lab. There are, as you know, labs that are happy and labs that are unhappy. And you can sense that. You know, people come they come as graduate students, or they say they want to go do a postdoc. I always advise them to go and see the lab and talk to people in the lab.
Right.
You will sense very fast whether this is a good lab or a not so good lab.
Right.
Never mind the brilliance of the PI.
What is a day in the life?
It depends on on the day of the week and on what month. Now, usually in July, I'd like to fish. That's my if I can help it.
Where do you go fishing?
In Greece, usually, but in Boston too.
Oh, wow. Are you good? Did you catch a lot?
Of course, I'm excellent.
You're amazing.
You know, I mean, I'm amazing. But Boston has a lot. It's very good for fishing.
Yeah.
Especially tuna.
Oh, okay.
It's tuna fishing.
Right. What's the biggest sized fish?
Tuna, 300 pounds.
300 pounds?
Pounds. Yeah.
That's big.
It's big.
That's
it's almost
big.
almost as big as I am. Yeah.
Wow. Amazing.
Everybody had sushi for a while.
What does fishing bring you, you know?
Peace.
Peace. Yeah.
I don't like to go fishing with buddies.
You just...
I hate that.
Okay. Solo activity.
You
in the water.
Much to the chagrin of my wife, because she's worried that I'll die someday.
Yeah.
And I'll say, what a way to go, frankly, you know. But we go out up to 70 miles into the ocean. So I had a good boat.
What kind of boat did you have?
I had, because it's not that, Boston whaler.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
37 feet, so that was a good boat.
It was a good boat.
Yeah. For fishing, ideal.
Yeah. Are there other things outside of your academic life that have brought you joy or energized you when you go back? Painting?
I paint, yeah.
What do you paint with?
Acrylics, because they are easier than oils. But
yeah. What do you like to paint?
Weird stuff, so I don't, you know.
What's weird stuff?
Very modern, very, very abstract.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Weird.
Didn't fancy trying the portraits or?
No, portrait.
Oof.
Boring. I'm not skilled enough to, or something, you know.
Does your wife let you hang your artworks at home?
Oh yeah. She, I'm not. I'm reasonably appreciated, let's say.
Great.
By my immediate environment.
They haven't just put everything in the basement.
Well, I have to because there are too many stuff, you know. I read a lot. I mean, that's something.
Fiction or non-fiction?
Yeah, fiction.
What genre?
I like a good spy novel as much as I like, James Joyce, since you like.
Okay. How do you want your body of work to inspire the next generations?
They build on what we published, so to speak. I mean, it's a trivial answer, but that's the way it is in our work, It's not as if you inspire them by taking a gun and going to the mountains to fight injustice or something,
Right.
I mean, our work is our work. That's it, yeah.
If you weren't a researcher,
Yeah.
you'd never kind of embarked on this path, what do you think you would have been doing with your life and why?
I always would have done something that is research-oriented. I could be Jane Goodall, or I could be a painter. I mean, I would love to be a painter.
Yeah.
A successful one, though. I always wanted to do science. I did science because I thought that everything has an answer, and everything has a rational answer,
Right.
rather than some metaphysical issue.
And were there any moments in your childhood?
I'm sure there were.
That you I haven't finished.
Yeah.
Any moments in your childhood that you recall that kind of sparked you going on this journey into science?
Not something particular. This was a continuum. There was not the spark. I mean,
Yeah, fair play. We've got the gala tonight. You all have these walk-up songs.
Yes.
What is your walk-up song and why?
He would know it, but it's a resistance song by Theodorakis. It's called Είμαστε δύο, είμαστε τρεις, είμαστε 1013. So that's what it is. Because it's times we have to recall again some of the other songs. It was a time where, and I'll say that, times where this song you could put you into prison if you sing it. So
Right.
I can't forget these things.
Yeah. Well, amazing. Thank you, Spyros, so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Sharing
So
your
what's
story
happening with
us.
this interview? What will happen? Will it go into YouTube or something?
I believe that's the plan.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Oh.